Periplus of the Outer Sea. Book 1. The sailing course of the sea which lies within the columns of Hercules, which ends in the ocean that flows along the land on the west, was described most diligently by Artemidoros of Ephesus in 11 books of his geography. And we, having made a general study of the books of that famous author, and having omitted the cities of the Berbers in Ethiopia, have compiled a clear description in brief summary, together with an accurate supplement of those things that have been discovered subsequently, so that nothing is left wanting for the widest knowledge of those who wish to learn this part of the geography. And of both oceans, the eastern and the western, the knowledge of which, so far as man may pursue it, has been made manifest to us by the industry and learning of many, we have made a description in 2 books, from the geography of the divine and most learned Ptolemy, and from the measurements of stadia by Protagoras, which he appended to his books on geography, and also from many other early authors, of the eastern and southern ocean in the first book, and of the western and northern in the second, together with the principal islands that lie therein, such as that called Taprobana, but formerly known as Palaisimundu, and the 2 Britannic islands, of which the former is known to be in the midst of the Indian Ocean, and the latter in the Northern Ocean. Although other early writers have dealt with this subject and have issued various local descriptions, we know of none who have touched upon more places, and we have set forth the work with care, lest we should seem inferior to any of them, hoping that because of such diligence we might produce a work stating the exact truth as they have given it. For this reason we have thought that the discrepancy which attaches to the measurements of stadia should be explained to our readers. For while in any case the account of the situation of countries, cities, islands, and ports should be accurate, it seems desirable so to present the facts that they shall be evidently true, even to those who from interest in nature may wish to consider the attributes of the sea while taking their measurements as they navigate. Although none of those who have written of these things has given such an account, but all have set down the numbers of stadia as if they were measuring the sea with a line. We must add that it is not easy to determine the accurate numbers of stadia in some parts of the sea. When a shoreline is comparatively straight and even, and has no concave recesses of the bays, nor any jutting points, the measurement of navigation along that shore is very easy. But we consider it impossible to state the exact diameters of the bays and of the capes or peninsulas, unless, just like a land route running over military roads, the course at sea is held between ascertained points. Let us assume, for example, a bay with a circuit around its shore of 100 stadia. A person navigating close inshore will find the number of stadia less than one walking around the shoreline afoot, although he would not err greatly from the true number. And a person navigating the same bay farther offshore would again find the stadia less than the one navigating close inshore, and less still than the one walking around the shore. For just as in the case of circles, if within the outer circumference you should describe another circle from the same center, and again another, and after that still another, you would find the second circle less than the first, and the third again less than the second, and the fourth likewise less than the third, and so on with the rest if you should go on in that way. So also with the bays, in describing their circumferences, it is possible for navigators to determine the courses in a greater or less number of stadia. The same thing is evident in a direct crossing. If you should prefer not to navigate around the shore, but to cross straight over, that crossing would be the shortest. Therefore, in the judgment of navigators, the number of stadia is always variable if it concerns bays and capes, for some measure in one way and others in another. Therefore, bear in mind, if you find any mistake in the numbers of stadia, that you should not lay the blame too strongly, because all the early writers, when they describe a sailing course, disagree among themselves as to the numbers of stadia in all the seas. It would take too long to state the causes of this discrepancy. However it may be, they have made similar statements of peoples and maritime and naval cities and islands, so that they never differed lightly, but disagreed as to distances in certain parts. Our sea is joined by the Western Ocean, coming in from the so-called Atlantic Sea, and flows within the land as far as the Gulf of Issos. The entrance to it by the columns of Hercules, or the Herculean Strait, is very narrow, being 80 stadia across, and that is the mouth of this gulf or sea, for by no other way can one reach the ocean from the inner sea than by the Strait of Hercules. This sea of ours extends as far as Egypt, which lies to the south, so that what we call the Egyptian Sea is opposite to the Arabian Gulf, and the land lying between that part of our sea and the Arabian Gulf forms a great isthmus. The sailing course of this sea we have set down in that epitome of the 11 books of the geographer Artemidoros already mentioned, and we shall now, of our own effort, describe the sailing course of the outer sea or ocean, both eastern and western. Eratosthenes the Cyrenaean stated the greatest circumference of the whole earth to be 259,200 stadia, and thus it was measured also by Dionysios, the son of Diogenes. But that divine Ptolemy, the elder of Eratosthenes in experience and true learning, although his junior in time, demonstrated the earth's circumference to be 180,000 stadia, the width being 80 meridian degrees and the length 180. The whole earth is contained within this measurement, in 3 separate continents, as all know, Asia, Libya, and Europe. Europe is separated from Libya by the mouth of the ocean near Gades, which they call the Herculean Strait, through which, as we said before, the ocean flows into our sea, and from Asia by the river Tanais, which borders it also on the mouth, flowing into the Maeotic Marsh, which in turn flows into the Euxine Sea. Libya is also separated from Europe by the Strait of Hercules aforesaid, and from Asia by the canobic mouth of the Nile. Asia is separated from Europe by the river Tanais, from Libya by the canobic mouth, as we have said. Thus our sea, which joins the Western Ocean through the Strait of Hercules, bounds 3 continents. The coast of Europe, if one should circumnavigate all the bays which are in our sea, begins at the river Tanais and ends at the Strait of Hercules and the island of Gades, and the whole sailing course of it is 69,000 stadia. The sailing course of Libya from the town of Tingis to the canobic mouth of the Nile is 30,280 stadia, and the sailing course of Asia and Egypt from the canobic mouth to the river Tanais is 40,120 stadia. Thus the whole coast of our sea, through Europe, Libya, and Asia, is 139,400 stadia. The first among these regions in size is Asia, the second Libya, the last Europe. Of the 3 seas, the first in size is the Indian Ocean. In the second place is our sea, which flows between Libya and Europe, beginning at Gades or the Strait of Hercules and reaching as far as Asia. The third is the Hyrcanian. The extent of the inhabited earth from east to west is measured as 78,545 stadia. That is, extending from the mouths of the Ganges, the easternmost of the rivers of the Indians, to the extreme westernmost cape of the whole earth, which is called the Sacred Cape among the Lusitanians, a people of Iberia, which extends westward beyond Gades or the columns of Hercules about 3,000 stadia. The direct line of width, where it is widest, is placed at 43,060 stadia, and it extends from the Ethiopian Sea to the island of Thule. Among the greatest bays, the first is the Gangetic, the second the Persian, the third is that called the Great, the fourth the Arabian, the fifth the Ethiopian, the sixth the Euxine, the seventh that of the Aegean Sea, the eighth the Maeotic Marsh, the ninth the Adriatic or Ionic, the 10th that of the Propontis. Among the greatest islands and peninsulas, the first in order is the island of Taprobana, which was formerly called Palaisimundu, and now also Salica. The second is Albion, one of the Britannic islands. The third, the Golden Chersonese. The fourth, Ivernia, likewise one of the Britannic islands. The fifth, the Peloponnesus. The sixth, Sicily. The seventh, Sardinia. The eighth, Corsica. The ninth, Crete. The 10th, Cyprus. Enough of these, now let us return to our subject. We shall begin the sailing course, as already explained, at the Arabian Gulf, at its inmost recess, which they call the Elanitic Gulf, where the continent, as we have said, is the narrowest, and hardly prevents our sea from joining with the Arabian Gulf. This recess is between Egypt and Arabia Petraea, which lies next to Judea, in which the people of Palestine dwell along our sea. For from Gaza, a city of Palestine, to the aforesaid Elanitic recess of the Arabian Gulf, as you go afoot toward the south, is 1,260 stadia. Now we shall set forth an accurate sailing course, with the numbers of stadia, of those parts of Asia which lie on the left hand, that is, Arabia Felix and the Erythraean Sea, and then of the Persian Gulf, and the whole Indian Ocean as far as the people of the Sinae and the end of the known earth. Of those parts of Libya on the right hand, to the so-called Cape Prosum and the island of Menuthias, we shall state the names of some of the towns and harbours, and especially the names of the bays of the sea, the capes and islands. But the distances between the places in numbers of stadia we shall rarely mention. For of these parts on the right hand we have not obtained the measurements, and know only that they are by land and sea opposite to Asia, that is, to the Arabs and Indians and the other peoples. But on the left-hand side, as already promised, we have diligently set down the sailing course. Sailing course of the right-hand side of the Arabian Gulf and of the Erythraean Sea and Indian Ocean. The statement and description of the right-hand parts of Libya are as follows, for before the local description it is best to give the names of places and countries. If you sail southward on the Arabian Gulf, never steering eastward, and hold the land on the right hand, you come first to Egypt, touching that gulf on one side where dwell the Arab-Egyptian fish-eaters. Beyond Egypt, for a long way, is the region of the cave-dwellers. It reaches along the Arabian Gulf and the Erythraean Sea, which flows beyond the mouth of the Arabian Gulf. When you navigate this sea and hold the land on the right, you come first to the Avalitic Gulf on the right-hand side of the Erythraean Sea. Here dwell the aforesaid cave-dwellers and the Avalitai, and beyond them the people of the Mosuli. Going forth from the Arabian Gulf and the Erythraean Sea, which is narrowed a little outside the Gulf by the Cape of Mosulum, you come to the Indian Ocean, extending far and wide. For in its length it reaches toward the rising sun as far as the people of the Sinae, who dwell at the last limit of the inhabited earth, next to the unknown eastern land. While in its width it flows far to the south, as far as another unknown land, which extends under it on the south, where the sea called Prasodes, a part of the Indian Ocean, the name being derived from the color, extends toward the east along all this unknown southern land. If you hold a southerly course beyond the Erythraean Sea, and hold the land always on the right, you come to the Elephant Mountain and the Land of Spices, beyond which you come to the people called Berbers, and the Berber Sea, in which there are many bays, and the so-called courses of Azania. And first among the bays is that called Apocopa, and then follow the small and great coasts, and then another great bay as far as the Cape of Hraptum. Beyond this is the so-called Shallow Sea, and a great bay in it, where dwell savage man-eaters. At the end of this bay is a great cape called Prosum, and the island of Menuthias, not far distant from Cape Prosum. This is the general statement and description of the right-hand side of the Arabian Gulf and the Erythraean Sea, and of the Indian Ocean beyond, which extends toward the south, and the local description is as follows. Astarte, an island of Ethiopia. Here begins Ethiopia, which is above Egypt. Beyond Cape Basium follows the Prionotus mountain. Facing this is the island of Astarte. Aspis, a town of Libya, as Philo says. It is also a cape of Ethiopia next to Egypt. Gypseus, an island of Ethiopia. Mosulum, a cape and market town of Ethiopia. Aroma, a town of the Ethiopians. Mirica, an island in the Erythraean Sea. Apocopa, a bay in the Berber Sea. Sailing course of the left-hand side of the Arabian Gulf and Erythraean Sea and of the whole Indian Ocean. On the left, or Asiatic side, the location of continent and seas is as follows. It is understood here again that it is best to state general names before local, and to give the relation of countries. So, if you navigate the Arabian Gulf and hold the continent on the left, you come first to Arabia Felix, which extends along the whole Arabian Gulf as far as the aforesaid Arabian Strait. Beyond the narrows of the Arabian Gulf follows the Erythraean Sea, and if you navigate along it and hold the continent on the left, you come to the well-known people of the Arabs, who inhabit all this continent. In this part of the sea is also the people of the Homerites, settled on the land of the Arabs and holding as far as the beginning of the Indian Ocean. Then, beyond the Erythraean Sea, follows the Indian Ocean. Now, if you navigate the left-hand side of this sea, holding next to the land of the Arabs as far as the mouth of the Persian Gulf, you come to the mountain of Siagros and the great bay of Sakhalites, which runs as far as the mouth of the Persian Gulf. If you enter the Persian Gulf and navigate it, holding the continent on the left as far as the mouths of the river Tigris, you come to the Bay of the Fish-Eaters, which extends a long way, and the Laianite Bay of Arabia Felix, and after that the Bay of Mesanites. Then, beyond the river Tigris, along the same Persian Gulf, you come to the province of Susiana. not to omit Persis, which lies next to Susiana, and after that the greater part of Carmania, as far as the narrows of the Persian Gulf. Furthermore, the Persian Gulf is opposite to the Caspian Sea, which is also called Hyrcanian, and the two, narrowing the intervening land, make a great isthmus of Asia. If you go forth from this gulf and navigate eastward, always holding the continent to the left, you come back to the Indian Ocean, where dwells the remainder of the people of Carmania. Beyond is the people of Gedrosia, and then India within the river Ganges, and opposite to the middle of this continent lies the great island which they call Taprobana. After this is the other India beyond the river Ganges, which is the boundary of either India. In India beyond the Ganges is the so-called Golden Chersoneset, Suvarnabhumi, beyond which is the so-called Great Bay, in the midst of which are the borders between India beyond the Ganges and the Sinae. Then you come to the people of the Sinae, whose metropolis, which is called Thynae, is the boundary between the known and the unknown land. This is the general statement of countries and the description of the left-hand parts of Asia and the Arabian Gulf and the Erythraean Sea, and also of the Persian Gulf and the whole Indian Ocean, but the local description is as follows. Sailing course of the left-hand side of the Arabian Gulf next to Arabia Felix. Arabia Felix is bounded on the northern side by Arabia Petraea and Arabia Deserta, and on the southern side by the Persian Gulf as far as the mouths of the river Tigris, on the eastern side also by the Persian Gulf and by part of the Indian Ocean, then on the south by the Erythraean Sea, and finally on the west by the Arabian Gulf. Its description is as follows. Toward the south it extends a great way into the Erythraean Sea and the Indian Ocean, as if it were a great peninsula, attached to the continent by a very broad isthmus, washed by the sea. From either side of that isthmus extend two gulfs, of which one, proceeding from the west, forms the so-called Arabian Gulf, of which we have already spoken. The other, trending toward the east, is called the Persian Gulf. Around the whole intermediate tract, that is, from the head of the Arabian Gulf to the aforesaid Persian Gulf, where the river Tigris empties, Arabia is circumnavigated, having the form of a peninsula, as we have said. It comprises within its area many and great peoples, of whom those bordering on the sea will be mentioned in the sailing course. The parts at the neck of Arabia Felix, beyond Arabia Petraea and Arabia Deserta, are inhabited by those who are called Saracens, who have many different names and hold a great area of desert land. And so they are neighbors of Arabia Petraea and Arabia Deserta, and of Palestine and Persis, and finally of the aforesaid Arabia Felix. One, a market town of Arabia Felix. Sidini, a people dwelling along the Erythraean Sea. Zadrame, a kingdom of the ᚠᚢᚱᚁᚠᚨᚱ᚞ᚁᚉ, who are a people of Arabia Felix. Zadrame, a city of the ᚠᚢᚱᚁᚁᚠᚁᚨ, tribe name Zadramayan. Kassanitai, a people on the banks of the Erythraean Sea. Then follow the people of Kassanitai. Minai, a people on the banks of the Erythraean Sea. Homeritai, a people of the Ethiopians. Chatromotitai, a people by the Indian Gulf dwelling along the river Prionis. Askitai, a people dwelling by the Indian Gulf and navigating on bladders. By the Bay of Sachalites dwell a people also called Sachalitai, and another people of the Askitai, who navigate on bladders. This is as if the word Askites were from Askos, just as Astites is from Astos, or Mesites from Mesos. Istriana, a city on the Persian Sea. Malada, a Persian city. Adarupolis, a Persian city. Koromane, a city on the Persian Gulf. The Gulf of Mesanites. Ladisakites, a bay in the Persian Sea. Ctesiphon, a city of Assyria. Arabia Felix extends in length 11,700 stadia, and in width 8,850 stadia. It has 54 provinces or satrapies, 164 notable cities and towns, 15 notable mountains, 4 notable rivers, 6 notable ports, 5 notable bays, 2 great coastlines, 35 notable islands mentioned in the sailing course. From the Cape of Asabi at the Mysanite Gulf, which is next to Arabia Felix, is 8,140 stadia in all. The sailing of the whole sea-coast of Arabia Felix, from the Elanite recess of the Arabian Gulf to the Mysanite Gulf and the head of the Persian Gulf by Arabia Deserta and the mouths of the river Tigris, is altogether 38,150 stadia. Sailing-Course of Susiana. Susiana lies on the Persian Gulf. It is bounded on the north by Assyria, on the west by the aforesaid Babylonia along that part of the river Tigris which is near the sea, on the east by Persis, on the south by the Persian Gulf from the mouths of the Tigris to the mouths by which the river ᚠᚢᚱᚁᚠᚨᚱᚁᚁ discharges into the Persian Gulf. This is the general description of the region, but the local sailing course is as follows. From the eastern mouth of the river Tigris to Charax-Spasini, 80 stadia. Off this coast lies an island called Abhana, which some include in the sailing course of Arabia Felix, counting 35 islands in that course. From Charax-Spasini to the mouths of the river Mogaius, 700 stadia. From the river Mogaius to the Bay of Pelode, 400 stadia. On this bay and the neighboring district dwell the Elymai, who are of the region of Susiana. Off the coast of this bay lies the island of Taxiana. From this bay to the mouths of the river Eulias, 690 stadia. Inland on this river is the city of Susa, the metropolis of Susiana. From the river Eulias to the sandy shoal, 110 stadia. From the sandy shoal to the mouths of the river Oroastis, 1,450 stadia. Susiana extends in length 3,500 stadia, in width 2,350 stadia. It has 6 provinces or satrapies, 17 notable cities and towns, 4 notable rivers, the Bay of Pelode, the Sandy Shoal, the Columns of Hercules. The whole sailing course along the coast of Susiana, from the mouth of the river Tigris to the mouths of the river Oroastis, is 3,430 stadia. Sailing course along Persis. Persis itself is situated on the Persian Gulf. It is bounded on the north by Medea, on the west by Susiana aforesaid, on the east by Carmania, on the south by the Persian Gulf from the river Oroatis to the mouths of the river Bagrada. This is the general description of the region, but the local sailing course is as follows. From the mouths of the river Oroatis to Cape Taoke, 500 stadia. From Cape Taoke to the mouths of the river Fragments, 700 stadia. In this course lies an island called Softha. From the river Fragments to a peninsula, 500 stadia. Opposite this is an island called Alexandri. From the peninsula to the mouths of the river Brisoana, 650 stadia. From the river Brisoana to Ausinsa, 600 stadia. From Ausinsa to the mouths of the river Bagrada, 450 stadia. Here, as we have said, is the boundary of Persis. Persis is 4,000 stadia in length, 1,400 stadia in width. It has 10 peoples or satrapies, 32 notable cities and towns, 3 notable rivers, 1 notable cape, 1 notable peninsula, 2 notable islands. The sailing course along the coast of Persis, from the Oroatis to the mouths of the river Bagrada, is altogether 3,400 stadia. Sailing course of Carmania. Carmania lies partly on the Persian Gulf and partly on the Indian Ocean outside the Persian Gulf. It is bounded on the north by Carmania Deserta, on the west by Persis aforesaid, by the river Bagrada already mentioned, and further by the remaining part of the Persian Gulf, which as you face west is called Carmanic, on the east by the province of Gedrosia as far as the Parsic Mountains, on the south beyond the straits of the Persian Gulf by the Indian Ocean. This is the general description, but the local sailing course is as follows. From the mouths of the river Bagrada aforesaid to the river Dara, 300 stadia. Here dwell the Cameloboschi, a people of Carmania. From the river Dara to the mouths of the river Cathrapis, 500 stadia. From the river Cathrapis to the mouths of the river Korios, 700 stadia. Off this coast lies an island called Agedana, in which much red lead is produced. From the river Korios to the mouths of the river Achidana, 400 stadia. From the river Achidana to the mouths of the river Andanis, 500 stadia. Near this coast is the island of ᚠᚢᚱᚁᚁᚁᚁ. From the river Andanis to the mouths of the river Saganos, 400 stadia. From the mouths of the river Saganos to the city of Armutsa, 200 stadia. from Armutza to the so-called Cape of the Armozzi, 800 stadia. From the Cape of the Armozzi to Cape Carpella, 750 stadia. Here is the aforesaid round mountain of Semiramis, which, as we have said, is opposite to the mountain and cape of the Asabi in Arabia Felix. And the two mountains, with their capes, make the straits of the Persian Gulf. The course along Carmania in the Persian Gulf, from the river Bagrada to the Round Mountain and Cape Carpella, is altogether 4,250 stadia, and the sum of the sailing courses around the entire Persian Gulf, from the mountain and cape of the Asabi to the Round Mountain of Semiramis and Cape of Carpella, is 16,790 stadia. Beyond Cape Carpella follows the Indian Ocean, extending eastward, next to which is the remaining part of Carmania as far as the land of the Musarnai. Beyond Cape Carpella follows a very great bay called Paragon, which extends as far as the cape called Alambater and the island called Tsiba. The local description is as follows. From Cape Carpella to the city of Kanthatis, 1,000 stadia. Here dwell the so-called Pasargadai of the people of the Carmani. From the city of Kanthatis to the city of Agrisa, 250 stadia. From the city of Agrisa to the notable market town of Omana, 600 stadia. From Omana to Hrogana, 150 stadia. From Hrogana to the mouths of the river Salaris, 150 stadia. From the river Salaris to Persis, 200 stadia. From Persis to the city of Samudake, 200 stadia. Thereabouts dwell the tortoise-eaters, also a people of Carmania. From the city of Samudake to the mouths of the river Samudacus, 500 stadia. From the river Samudacus to the city of Tessa, 400 stadia. From the city of Tessa to the mouths of the river Hydriakos, 200 stadia. From the mouths of the river Hydriakos to Cape Bagia, 400 stadia. From Cape Bagia to the port of Kuitsa, 250 stadia. From the port of Kuitsa to Cape Alambater, 400 stadia. Offshores from these places lies an island called Pola. Off Cape Alambater is an island called Tsiba. This, as we have said above, marks the end of the bay which is called Paragon, and the whole sailing course from the Cape Carpella to Cape Alambater is 4,700 stadia. From Cape Alambater to Derenobila, 250 stadia. Offshore lies an island called Carmina. From Derenobila to the port of Kofanta, 250 stadia. From the port of Kofanta to the mouths of the river Tsorambus, 200 stadia. From the river Tsorambus to Badara, 250 stadia. From Badara to the city of Musarna, 300 stadia. Carmania extends in length 7,000 stadia, in width 1,500 stadia. It has 10 peoples or satrapies, 23 notable cities and towns, 3 notable mountains, 10 notable rivers, 3 notable capes, 2 notable ports, 5 notable islands. The sailing course of Carmania along the Indian Ocean, from Cape Carpella to the city of Musarna, is altogether 5,950 stadia. The sailing course of the whole coast of Carmania, from the river Bagrada to the city of Musarna, totals 10,200 stadia. Sailing course of Gedrosia. Gedrosia is bounded on the north by Drangiana and Arachosia, on the west by Carmania aforesaid as far as the sea, on the east by part of India along the river Indus as far as the boundary of Arachosia already mentioned, and on the south by the Indian Ocean. This is the general description. The local description is as follows. From the city of Musarna to the mouths of the river Arabis, 1,300 stadia. If you navigate up the river, you come to a city on the right bank called Arabis, and above it, also on the right bank, Persis, the metropolis of Gedrosia. From the river Arabis to the city of Hraprawa to the port of Women, 500 stadia. Thereabouts are the towns of the Arbiti. From the port of Women to Coiamba, 400 stadia. From Coiamba to Hritsana, 1,110 stadia. Then begins the region of Patalene, the greater part of which is comprised within the mouths of the river Indus, and it contains the metropolis called Patala, which is situated beyond the third mouth of the Indus as if on an island, and many other towns. Gedrosia extends in length 6,600 stadia, in width 5,250 stadia. It contains 8 provinces or satrapies, 12 notable cities and towns, 1 very great mountain, 1 great river, 1 notable port, 2 notable islands. The whole course along the coast of Gedrosia from the city of Musarna to Hritsana is 3,850 stadia. Sailing course of India within the river Ganges and of the bays and islands thereof. India, which is within the river Ganges, is bounded on the north by the Imau mountains along the Sogdiani and Sakai who dwell above them, on the west by the sea and by Gedrosia aforesaid, inland by Arachosia and the region of the Paraponisadae which lies above it, on the east by the river Ganges, on the south by the Indian Ocean. This is the general description. The local description is as follows. The whole sailing course of the aforesaid part of India within the Ganges, from the port of Nausthosmos to Cape Kori, is 21,725 stadia. Sailing course of the island of Taprobana. Opposite to the Cape of India, which is called Kori, is the cape of the island of Taprobana called Boreum. The island of Taprobana was formerly called Palaisimundu, but now Salika. The cape of the island, which we said is called Boreum, opposite to Cape Kori, is distant from the eastern horizon 26,460 stadia, from the western 61,626 stadia, while on the south it is at a distance of 6,350 stadia north from the equator. Margana, a town of India. Beyond the promontory of Boreum, the whole description and sailing course of the island of Taprobana is as follows. The length through the diameter is 9,500 stadia, the width 7,500 stadia. It has 13 peoples or satrapies, 22 notable cities and market towns, 2 notable mountains, 5 notable rivers, 8 notable capes, 4 notable ports, 2 great bays, 1 great coastline. The whole sailing course of the island of Taprobana is 26,385 stadia. We have said enough about the island of Taprobana. Let us return to the sailing course along India within the Ganges. Sailing course of the Gangetic Bay. From this point of departure, for those bound to Chrysae, begins the very great bay called Gangetic, into the head of which empties the river Ganges, discharging through 5 mouths, which, as we have said, is the boundary between India within the Ganges and India beyond the Ganges. The length of India within the river Ganges, where it extends the greatest, from the 5th mouth of the river Ganges, which is called Antibole, to the port of Nausthosmos, situated on the Gulf of Canthi, is 18,290 stadia, and the width from the cape of the point of departure, so called, to the sources of the river Ganges is 13,000 stadia. It has 54 peoples or satrapies, 216 notable cities and towns and market towns, 6 notable mountains, 23 notable rivers, 2 notable capes, 1 notable port, 5 notable bays, 12 notable mouths of rivers, 1 notable point of departure, 10 confluences of notable rivers, 8 notable islands. The whole sailing course through that part of the Gangetic Bay which is between the point of departure and the 5th mouth of the Ganges, called Antibole, is 5,660 stadia. All the sailing courses of India within the river Ganges, from the port of Nausthosmos to the 5th mouth of the river Ganges, which is called Antibole, total 35,695 stadia. Sailing course of India beyond the river Ganges and of the bays thereof. India beyond the river Ganges is bounded on the north by parts of Scythia and Serica, on the west by the river Ganges itself, on the east by the region of the Sinae as far as the so-called Great Bay, and by that bay, on the south by the Indian Ocean and part of the Sea of Prasodes, which begins at the island of Menuthias and extends on a parallel line to the opposite parts of the Great Bay, as we said above. The length of India beyond the Ganges, where it extends the longest, is 11,650 stadia. The width, where it is extended widest, is 19,000 stadia. It has 50 peoples or satrapies, 67 notable cities, towns, and market towns, 18 notable mountains, 5 notable capes, 3 notable ports, 1 very great bay, 30 notable islands. The whole sailing course from the Great Cape to the country of the Sinae, in that part of the Great Bay which is next to India without the Ganges, is 12,550 stadia. All the sailing courses of the coast of India beyond the Ganges, from the fifth mouth of the Ganges, which is called Antibole, to the country of the people of the Sinae, total 45,350 stadia. Sailing course of the country of the Sinae and the bays thereof. The people of the Sinae are bounded on the north by part of Serica, on the west by India beyond the river Ganges along the aforesaid border in the Great Bay, on the east by unknown land, on the south by the southern sea and the unknown southern land. This is the description. Beyond dwell the fish-eating Sinae as far as the unknown southern land, for there are two unknown lands that must be understood. One of them extends eastward, which the Sinae inhabit, as we have said, and the other southward, which stretches out along the whole Indian Ocean, or rather along the sea called Prasodes, which is part of the Indian Ocean, so that where these lands come together it makes a sort of angle near the Gulf of the Sinae. Above the Sinae is the region of the Seri and their metropolis. Eastward beyond them is unknown land, having stagnant lakes in which great reeds grow so closely crowded together that men cross over the lakes by walking upon them. Sailing course of the Bay of Wild Animals. Now beyond the Great Bay and the Cape of the South Wind, if you navigate toward the south and hold the land of the Sinae to the left and eastward, you come to the so-called Bay of Wild Animals, reaching as far as the so-called Cape of Satyrs. The sailing course of the Bay of Wild Beasts from the Cape of the South Wind to the Cape of Satyrs is altogether 10,503 stadia. Sailing course of the Bay of the Sinae. Beyond the Cape of Satyrs follows a very great bay called the Bay of the Sinae. This extends as far as the unknown southern land, which adjoins the unknown eastern land, next to which, as we have said, dwell the Sinae. From the Cape of Satyrs to the mouths of the river Cotiaris, which empties into the Gulf of the Sinae, is 1,250 stadia. Across the river Cotiaris you come to Katigara, the leading port of the Sinae and the end of the known and inhabited land in the regions of the south. It is not easy to set down the stages and figures of this sailing course, for there are no witnesses to point out the course beyond the port of the Sinae unless it be some god who knows, and of the coast to the south along the unknown land, and of the unknown land to the east beyond the Sinae, accurate knowledge does not exist among men. The greatest length of the land of the Sinae is 3,000 stadia, and the greatest width 17,250 stadia. It has 5 peoples or satrapies, 7 notable cities and towns, 1 notable mountain, 4 notable rivers, 2 notable bays, that is, the Bay of Wild Animals and the Bay of the Sinae, 2 notable capes. Altogether, there are 560 cities and towns in the eastern land. The whole sailing course along the coast of the Sinae, from the boundary between the Sinae and India beyond the Ganges in the Great Bay to the mouths of the river Cotiaris, totals 12,650 stadia. Summary of all the aforesaid distances. The whole sailing course and description of the seacoast of the regions of Asia, from the Arabian Gulf and the Erythraean Sea, through the Persian Gulf and the Indian Ocean, is put together in this way, and the entire distance, if you circumnavigate all the bays from the Elenite recess to the mouths of the river Cotiaris in the Bay of the Sinae, is 153,295 stadia. The particulars of the distance of the seacoast on the left hand are as follows. From the Elenite recess, from which we made the beginning of the sailing course of the left-hand regions of Asia, to the narrows of the Arabian Gulf, 11,670 stadia. From the narrows of the Arabian Gulf, the sailing courses of the Erythraean Sea and part of the Indian Ocean are 21,530 stadia. From the mouth of the Persian Gulf until you come back to the same mouth, the sailing course of the whole Persian Gulf is 16,790 stadia. From the Persian Gulf to the end of the coast of Carmania is 5,950 stadia. From the aforesaid borders of Carmania to the town of Fritsana on the coast of Gedrosia is 3,850 stadia. From the aforesaid borders of Gedrosia, and from the first and greatest western mouth of the river Indus, which is called Sagapa, to the fifth mouth of the river Ganges, which is called Antibole, the sea-coast of India within the river Ganges is 35,695 stadia. From the fifth mouth of the river Ganges, which is called Antibole, to the line of the region of the Sinae, which is in the midst of the Great Gulf, the coast of India beyond the Ganges is 43,350 stadia. From the border of the Sinae, which is in the Great Bay, to the mouth of the river Kotiaris, the sea-coast of the Sinae is 12,650 stadia. The totals of all the aforesaid sailing courses of the left-hand regions of Asia, from the Elenite recess to the Sinae and the mouths of the river Kotiaris, amount to 153,295 stadia. Here, then, we shall make an end of the first book, in which we have written down the sailing course of the whole Arabian Gulf and the whole Erythraean Sea, and of both the right and left sides of the Indian Ocean, so far as it can be done by the diligence and study of men, to the unknown land on both continents, eastern and southern. Now we shall begin on the sailing course of the Western Ocean, for that is what we promised to do at the beginning of the book. Book 2. The second book will contain the general sailing course from the Strait of Hercules, then along the western and northern ocean as far as the extreme north, and then along the southern regions as far as the unknown land of the other continent. This sailing course is on the right hand along Iberia or Hispania as far as it adjoins the ocean, and along Aquitania, Lugdunensis, and Baetica, and Greater Germany as far as European Sarmatia, after which follows the unknown northern land, and further of two islands of the northern ocean which are commonly called by the name of Britannic, but also properly one is called Hibernia and the other Albion. And then on the left-hand side along Libya and the western and southern ocean, including the places adjacent thereto, as far as the lower coast of Ethiopia, where it is known that the ocean ceases to flow toward the south and then follows an unknown land. For of the whole sea within the columns of Hercules, as we have already said, we have made an accurate sailing course, according to our opinion, in a summary of 11 books of the Ephesian geographer Artemidoros, which sailing course we think that we have written down with diligence in the books of the geography of our sea. But of the outer sea, which is called by most the ocean, and which in some of its regions the aforesaid Artemidoros briefly described, we have chosen the most accurate sailing course from the geography of the most divine Ptolemy, and furthermore from the books of Protagoras and other early writers. The sailing course of the Arabian Gulf and of the Erythraean Sea along either continent, and also of the whole Indian Ocean as far as it could be done in order, we have set down in Book 1. And now we shall proceed to the sailing courses of the Western Ocean. We shall make a beginning of the sailing course of the outer sea from the Strait of Hercules. This strait separates the two continents, Iberia, which is also called Hispania, a part of Europe, and Libya, opposite thereto. Now, if you go forth from the Strait of Hercules and hold a course toward the ocean, Baetica, a province of Hispania, is on the right hand. On the left, the provinces of Libya called Mauritanian. Between them lies a bay of the inner sea called the Iberic. And when you sail through the Strait of Hercules and pass by the Temple of Juno, which is on the right as you go out of the strait, you come to the ocean flowing along either continent, that is, Iberia and Libya, and extending westward in unmeasured and unknown width. Because many of those who have navigated in these parts were deceived in the number of stadia, although we have summarized the causes of this error in Book 1, for greater certainty we have written down 2 numbers of stadia, adding to the text not more and not less, so that he who holds to the mean of both figures goes as if by the rule of truth from those who have accurately explored the matter. Protagoras, wisely observing this same thing in his geography, seems to avoid this error about the stadia. Sailing course of those parts of Iberia, which is also called Hispania, lying next to the ocean. Iberia, which is also called Hispania, begins at the Pyrenean Mountains and is of very great extent, surrounded on either side by the sea, both the northern and western oceans and our sea. The Pyrenean Mountains also begin at our sea and extend as far as the northern ocean. And one extremity of this range rises above our sea, while the other extremity projects toward the north and the northern ocean. Also, it separates and divides Iberia from the neighboring Celtogalatia, so that Iberia has the form of a very great peninsula, which adheres by its neck to the Pyrenean Mountains. Also, the range is curved in the same way toward Hispania. Formerly, Iberia was divided by the Romans into 2 provinces, but now into 3, Hispania Baetica, Hispania Lusitanica, and Hispania Tarraconensis. A part of Baetica extends a great way along our sea within the columns of Hercules, and a part is situated next to the Western Ocean. Of the 2 remaining provinces, Lusitania lies entirely along the Western Ocean. Tarraconensis, for the greater part, adjoins the Northern Ocean, but some part also adjoins our sea, reaching from the south at either sea as far as the Pyrenean Mountains. And now we shall set down the sailing course of those parts of Iberia which are next to the ocean, for this we promised that we should do. Sailing course of the parts of Baetica from Calpe as far as the borders of Lusitania. Hispania Baetica is bounded on the north and west by Lusitania and by part of the province of Tarraconensis, on the east by the so-called Balearic Gulf, which adjoins the Iberian Sea, on the south at the sea which is beyond the Strait of Hercules by the Western Ocean, and at the sea within the strait by the Iberian Gulf. This is the general description. The local description is as follows. From Calpe mountain and the column, which is at the beginning of the inner sea, when you sail forth from the strait into the ocean and have the continent of Iberia on the right hand, it is 50 stadia to Cartea. Here dwells a people of the Bostuli who are called Poeni. From Cartea to Barbesola, 100 stadia. From Barbesola to Transducta, not more than 200 stadia, nor less on a straight line than 145 stadia. From Transducta to Menralia, not more than 155 stadia, nor less than 123 stadia. From Menralia to the city of Bellone, not more than 140 stadia, nor less than 100 stadia. Here begins the people of the Turduli. From the city of Bellone to the mouths of the river Bellone, not more than 75 stadia, nor less than 50 stadia. From the mouths of the river Bellone to the cape at the beginning of the strait at which is a temple of Juno, 200 stadia, 150 stadia. Henceforth the stadia only will be set down, and the first number will indicate the maximum, and the second the minimum, so that we shall not further write down more than or less than for each separately. From the cape, then, at which is the strait and the temple of Juno, if you navigate the ocean toward the north and hold the continent on the right hand, and on the left the western ocean, you come to the port of Menestheus, to which it is 225 stadia, 160 stadia. Next to these places is the island of Gadira, or Gades, in the outer sea, in which is a city with the same name, Gadira. From the promontory at the strait to the island of Gadira, it is 270 stadia, 240 stadia. From the port of Menestheus to the bay by Astra, 210 stadia. Here the dwellings of the Turdetani begin. From the bay by Asta to the eastern mouth of the river Baedia, 385 stadia, 285 stadia. From the mouths of the river Baedia to the sources of the same river, 3,350 stadia, 2,400 stadia. From the eastern and greater mouth of the river Baedia to the bay of Onoba, 420 stadia, 300 stadia. From the bay of Onoba to the mouths of the river Anas, 210 stadia, 150 stadia. From the mouths of the river Anas to the sources of the same river, 2,145 stadia, 1,550 stadia. Here is the boundary of Hispania Baetica, which region adjoins the seas on either side of the Strait of Hercules, not only our sea, but also the outer or ocean sea. The length of all Baetica begins at the mouths of the river Anas and ends at the sources of the same river Anas, so that following the longest line it is 3,709 stadia. The width of Baetica begins at the sources of the same river and descends toward the south to the temple of Juno Aforesaid, or the city of Bellone, or the great Portum, so that the entire width following the longest line is 1,158 stadia. The circumference of Mediterranean Baetica is 6,709 stadia, 5,140 stadia. It has 5 peoples, 85 notable cities, 3 notable mountains, 5 notable rivers, 2 notable capes, 1 notable port. The sum of the stadia of the whole sailing course of Baetica does not exceed 4,345, and of the coast of Baetica on the ocean, of which we made the sailing course from Calpe mountain and the column to the mouths of the river Anas, it is not more than 2,380, nor less than 1,245. Sailing course of Lusitania. Hispania Lusitanica is bounded on the north by Hispania Tarraconensis along the western part of the river Dorius, on the east by the same Tarraconensis, on the west by the Western Ocean, on the south by Baetica Aforesaid, which, as we said, also adjoins the Western Ocean, and by our sea. This is the general description. The local description is as follows. From the mouths of the aforesaid river Anas to Balsa, 380 stadia. In this region dwell the Turdetani. From Balsa to Osonoba, 340 stadia, 300 stadia. From Osonoba to the Sacred Cape, 360 stadia, 260 stadia. This cape extends far into the ocean and is among the most celebrated. From the Sacred Cape to the mouths of the river Kalipos, 1,350 stadia, 950 stadia. From the mouths of the river Kalipos to Salacra, 230 stadia, 210 stadia. From Salacra to Kaitobriga, 105 stadia, 90 stadia. From Kaitobriga to the Barbarian Cape, 190 stadia, 160 stadia. From the Barbarian Cape to Oleosipo, 380 stadia, 250 stadia. From Oleosipo to the mouths of the river Tagus, 155 stadia. To the sources of the river, stadia. From the mouths of the river Tagus to the cape of the Mountain of the Moon, 150 stadia, 120 stadia. Next lies the island called Llano Bris. To that island from the Cape of the Moon it is 940 stadia, 670 stadia. From the Sacred Cape to the island it is 1,510 stadia, 1,130 stadia. From the Mountain of the Moon to the mouths of the river Monda, 150 stadia, 120 stadia. From the river Monda to the mouths of the river Waka, 380 stadia, 275 stadia. Beyond the river Waka follow the mouths of the river Dorius, along which the boundary of Hispania Lusitanica extends. From the mouths of the river Dorius to the sources of the same river, 1,370 stadia. The length of Lusitania begins on the western side at the Sacred Cape and ends at the sources of the river Dorius, so that on the line of the greatest length it is 3,335 stadia. The width of Lusitania begins on the sea at the northern shore by the mouths of the river Waka and extends southward to the city of Balsa, so that on the line of the greatest width it is 1,793 stadia. The whole land circuit of Lusitania is 4,400 stadia, 4,000 stadia. It has 4 tribes, 56 notable towns, 5 notable mountains, 6 notable rivers, 2 notable capes. The sailing courses on the ocean along the shores of Lusitania, from the mouths of the river Anas to the mouths of the river Dorius, total not more than 4,140 stadia, nor less than 3,265. Sailing-Course of Tarraconensis. Hispania Tarraconensis is bounded on the north by the Cantabrian Ocean, and this is of the northern regions. On the rising of the summer sun by all the Pyrenees, from the Oasis Cape of the Pyrenees to another cape of the same which reaches to our sea, on which is placed a temple of Venus, on the rising of the winter sun by the Balearic Gulf, on the south by Lusitania aforesaid and by that part of Baetica which adjoins our sea, on the west by the Western Ocean. This is the general description. The local description is as follows. The length of Tarraconensis begins on the western shore at Cape Nernis and ends at the Cape of the Pyrenees which is on our sea where the Temple of Venus is situated, so that the length of the province along the lines drawn through its midst is 7,230 stadia. The width of Tarraconensis begins on the northern shore at the Cantabrian Ocean and the Pyrenees Mountains, and extends southward to the northern parts of Lusitania and Baetica, and to Urque, a city of Baetica, so that the full width along the greatest line is 4,250 stadia. And the land circuit of it is 4,500 stadia, 3,300 stadia. It has 55 peoples, 273 notable cities, 5 notable mountains, 23 notable rivers, 8 notable capes, 2 notable ports. The sailing course of those parts of the province of Tarraconensis adjoining the ocean, on the western and northern shores, has been thus set down. But the remaining portion of it next the Balearic Gulf, extending from the Cape of the Pyrenees Mountains, where we said the Temple of Venus is situated, to Urque, beyond which follows the province of Baetica, the parts of which adjoining the Strait of Hercules in the Western Ocean we have gone over at the beginning of this book. This part we have described accurately in our epitome of the geography or Periplus of Artemidoros. Altogether, then, from the mouth of the river Dorius to Oeasus, a cape of the Pyrenees, the sailing courses along the seacoast of Tarraconensis are not more than 10,327 stadia, nor less than 8,012. From the mountain of Calpe by the Strait of Hercules to Oeasus, a cape of the Pyrenees, the sailing courses altogether amount to not more than 16,845 stadia, nor less than 13,282. The sailing course of Iberia along the western and northern ocean, from the mountain of Calpe and the Strait of Hercules to the Pyrenees Mountains and their northern extremity called Oeasus, is set down in this manner, but now we shall proceed to those that follow. The sailing course of Celtogalatia. Celtogalatia, as they call it, extends a long way by land and sea, and it is divided into 4 provinces: Gallia Aquitanica, Gallia Lugdunensis, Gallia Belgica, and Gallia Narbonensis. Of these, the 3 provinces which we named first adjoin the ocean, in succession northward, but Narbonensis is situated on our inner sea, looking toward the south. Beginning in order with Aquitania, we shall set down the sailing course of those tribes who dwell along the northern ocean of Celtogalatia, for this we are enabled to do. We outlined clearly the sailing course of Gallia Narbonensis in our epitome of the geography or Periplus of Artemidoros, although the aforesaid Artemidoros made no distinction of Celtogalatia, as if it were one of the provinces of Iberia. Sailing course of Aquitania. Aquitania is bounded on the north by part of the neighboring province of Lugdunensis and by the adjacent northern ocean, on the east by part of the province of Lugdunensis along the river Liger as far as its sources, and by part of Narbonensis as far as its termination in the Pyrenees Mountains. On the west with the Aquitanic Ocean, and on the south by part of the Pyrenees next to the Oeasus Cape which juts into the ocean, and by part of the province of Narbonensis from the head of the Liger to the aforesaid boundary in the Pyrenees Mountains. And the general boundaries of the province are after this manner, but the particular localities in the coast region along the Aquitanic Ocean are as follows. After the Oeasus Cape of the Pyrenees follow the mouths of the river Aturius. To them it is not more than 1,250 stadia, nor less than 750 stadia. From the mouths of the river Aturius to the mouths of the river Signatis, 500 stadia, 450 stadia. From the mouths of the river Signatis to Cape Curianum, 500 stadia, 370 stadia. From Curianum to the mouths of the river Garuna, being 50 stadia wide at the mouth, 600 stadia, 430 stadia. From the mouth of the river Garuna to the sources thereof, there are 900 stadia, 600 stadia. If you sail up the river Garuna, you come to Burdigala, a city of Aquitania. In it dwell the Santones, whose city Mediolanium is on the sea, next to the river Garuna. From the mouths of the Garuna to the cape of the Santones, 475 stadia, 325 stadia. From the cape of the Santones to the mouths of the river Canintellus, 560 stadia, 550 stadia. From the mouths of the river Canintellus to the promontory of the Pictonii, 210 stadia, 150 stadia. From the promontory of the Pictonii to the harbour of Secor, 300 stadia, 290 stadia. From the harbour of Secor to the mouths of the river Liger, 185 stadia, 155 stadia. The people of the Samnitae dwell along the river. The length of Aquitania, beginning at the mouths of the Aturus River and ending at the city of Awaricum, along the line of the greatest length, is 1,408 stadia. The width of Aquitania begins at its boundary in the Pyrenees and extends as far as the bending of the river Liger toward the south, about 2,250 stadia. The whole land circuit of it is not more than 4,770 stadia, nor less than 3,370 stadia. It has 16 peoples, 16 notable cities, 5 notable rivers, 4 notable capes, 1 notable port. The whole sailing course along the shores of Aquitania, from the Oeasus Cape of the Pyrenees to the mouths of the river Liger, is not more than 4,800 stadia, nor less than 3,525 stadia. Sailing course of Lugdunensis. Gallia Lugdunensis is bounded on the north by the Britannic Ocean, on the east by the Belgic province as far as the river Sequana, on the west by the Aquitanic Ocean, on the south by part of the province of Narbonensis. This is the general description. The local description is as follows. The length of Lugdunensis begins at the promontory of Gabaius and follows the eastern side, where it joins the Belgic province at the river Sequana, so that its length is 3,376 stadia. The width of Lugdunensis begins on the south at the city of Cabulinum and extends to the mouth of the river Sequana, so that the width is 3,080 stadia. The land circuit of the province is 7,290 stadia, 6,420 stadia. It has 25 peoples, 26 notable cities, 1 notable mountain, 4 notable rivers, 1 notable cape, 3 notable ports. The whole sailing course along the shores of Lugdunensis, from the mouths of the river Liger to the mouths of the river Sequana, 3,370 stadia, 3,065 stadia. Sailing course of Belgica with Upper and Lower Germany. Belgica, with the 2 Germanies, is bounded on the north by the Northern Ocean, where it extends along Britannia, on the east by the river Rhenus, next to Greater Germany, as far as the head of the river, and thence by the mountain extending from the source thereof to the Alps, which is called Adulas, on the west by the province of Lugdunensis and the aforesaid river Sequana, on the south by the remaining part of Narbonensis. This is the general description. The local description is as follows. The region which extends from the sea to the river Obrinka is called Lower Germany, and beyond the river Obrinka it is called Upper Germany. The length of Belgica, with the 2 Germanies, begins at the mouths of the river Frudis, and ends on the east at the river Rhenus, which extends along Greater Germany as far as the head of the river, so that the length is 2,685 stadia. The width of it begins at the Adulas mountain and the continuing boundary of the Alps and the Adulas mountain, and extends to the western mouth of the river Rhenus, so that it is 4,375 stadia in width. The whole land circuit of Belgica with the 2 Germanies is 15,160 stadia, 12,300 stadia. Belgica with the Germanies has 24 peoples, 38 notable cities, 2 notable mountain ranges, 7 notable rivers, 1 notable cape. The whole sailing course along the shores of Belgica with Upper and Lower Germany, from the river Sequana to the river Rhenus, that is, to that mouth which is called the Western, is not more than 3,850 stadia, nor less than 3,180 stadia. Greater Germany is bounded on the north by the ocean called Germanic, on the east by the Sarmatian mountains and by that part of Sarmatia below the mountains as far as the source of the river Vistula, and then by that river, on the south by the western part of the Danube River, and the Danube at the beginning of this part has a width of 1 stadium, beyond of 2, and then of 3. The name, too, changes and is called Ister. On the west by the river Rhenus. This is the general description. The local description is as follows. From the mouths of the river Rhenus, that is, from the so-called western mouth of it, to the mouths of the river Widrus, 380 stadia. From the river Widrus to the port of Mararmanum, 350 stadia, 250 stadia. From the port of Mararmanum to the mouths of the river Amasius, there are 655 stadia, 470 stadia. From the mouths of the river Amasius to the sources of the same river, 2,350 stadia, 1,300 stadia. From the mouths of the river Amasius to the mouths of the river Visurgis, 560 stadia. From the mouths of the river Visurgis to the sources of the same river, 1,780 stadia, 1,600 stadia. From the river Visurgis to the mouths of the river Albis, 925 stadia. From the mouths of the river Albis to the sources of the same river, 5,370 stadia, 3,300 stadia. Opposite this section lie the so-called islands of the Saxons, and from the mouth of the river Albis to them is 750 stadia. After the river Albis follows the so-called Great Cimbric Peninsula, and from the mouths of the river Albis to the first extension of the peninsula, which lies beyond the river Albis, is 570 stadia, 400 stadia. From the first cape of the peninsula to the next succeeding cape of the same peninsula, 1,600 stadia, 1,100 stadia. From the second cape of the peninsula to that which follows next and is the greatest northward extension of it, 1,450 stadia, 1,150 stadia. From the northmost projection of the peninsula to the first cape after turning, 650 stadia, 550 stadia. From the first cape after turning to the easternmost part of the peninsula, 720 stadia, 520 stadia. And from the easternmost part of the peninsula to the next cape, 2,000 stadia, 1,500 stadia. From the first cape after that extension to the turning point of the peninsula toward the east, 1,060 stadia, 750 stadia. Here ends the sailing course of the Cimbric Peninsula, which extends a great way into the ocean, bending also obliquely to the continent, which extends toward the east, so that it makes a very great strait with the region adjacent to the river Suevus, extending inland from the river. The neck of the peninsula is inhabited by a tribe of the people called Saxons, and the peninsula itself by many tribes. Above the peninsula lie 3 islands called Alochian. They are distant from the peninsula 550 stadia, 500 stadia. On the eastern side of the peninsula lie the 4 so-called Scandian islands, 3 small, to the midst of which from the peninsula is 2,000 stadia, 1,700 stadia, 1 very large and farther to the east. It also is called Scandia by itself. It lies opposite the mouths of the river Vistula, from which it is distant 1,600 stadia, 1,200 stadia. And the whole sailing course around Scandia is 2,500 stadia, 2,000 stadia. From the bending of the peninsula toward the east to the mouths of the river Suevus is 1,260 stadia. From the river Suevus to the mouths of the river Viadus, 850 stadia. From the mouths of the river Viadus to the mouths of the river Vistula, 700 stadia. From the mouths of the river Vistula to the head of the same river, 2,000 stadia, 1,850 stadia. The length of Germany begins in the west at the city of Asciburgium and ends at the mouths of the river Vistula, so that the total length of the region is 5,500 stadia, 4,350 stadia. The width of it begins at the parting of the river flowing from the south, which is called Arabo, and ends in the north next the longest line that is in the Cimbric Peninsula, and at the northernmost extension thereof, so that it has a width of 6,250 stadia. The land circuit of Greater Germany is 12,300 stadia, 11,250 stadia. It comprises 68 peoples, 94 notable cities, 7 notable mountain ranges, 14 notable rivers, the Cimbric Peninsula, a notable port, the Orcunian Forest, the Gabretan Forest. The sailing course along the coast of Greater Germany from the river Rhenus, that is, from its westernmost mouth to the mouths of the river Vistula, amounts altogether 13,400 stadia, 10,030 stadia. Sarmatia, in Europe, is bounded on the north by the Sarmatic Ocean next the Wendic Gulf, and by a region of unknown land. On the east by an isthmus which begins at the Carcinite River, and the marsh of Buce and the Maeotic Marsh on the side next the river Tanais, and then by the river Tanais itself, and beyond toward the south, extending from the sources of the river Tanais into unknown land. On the west by the river Vistula and Greater Germany beyond the Sarmatic Mountains, and by those mountains themselves. On the south by the Yatsiki and Metanastai from the southern end of the Sarmatic Mountains to the beginning of the Carpathian Mountains, and then by Dacia as far as the mouths of the river Borysthenes, and thence by the shore of the Euxine Sea as far as the innermost recess of the Carcinite Gulf. This is the general description, but we give the local description of Sarmatia in summary, not adding the number of stadia, because the correct sailing course along this northern ocean is unknown, as it lies next to unknown land at the north, which is situated above the Maeotic Marsh for the most part, not easily explored by man, especially as Protagoras also seems to have omitted the numbers of these stadia. For the same reason also, in describing these places, we make mention only of the mouths of rivers. After the mouths of the river Vistula follow the mouths of the river Chronos. After the river Chronos, then come the mouths of the river Hrudon. These rivers flow into the Wendic Gulf, which begins at the river Vistula and is of very great extent. The river Hrudon is followed by the river Turantas. Beyond the river Turantas is the river Chesinus and its mouths. Beyond the river Chesinus is the unknown Hyperborean Ocean, contiguous with the unknown Hyperborean land. Along the river Chesinus dwell the Agathyrsi, a tribe of European Sarmatia. The rivers Chesinus and Turantes flow down from mountains extending above them, which are called Ripaian, in the midland regions lying between the Maeotic Marsh and the Sarmatic Ocean. The river Hrudon is derived from the Alanus mountain. This mountain and the region next it has long been inhabited by the Alani, a tribe of the Sarmatians, among whom also are the sources of the river Borysthenes, which flows into the Euxine Sea. The region about the Borysthenes beyond the Alani is inhabited by the so-called European Huni. The length of Sarmatia is 7,700 stadia, The width 7,650 stadia. It has 56 tribes, 53 notable cities, 9 notable mountains, 4 notable rivers, 3 notable capes, 3 notable ports, 4 notable gulfs, that is, the one called Wendic, and 3 others. Now, the course around the right-hand regions of Europe, as promised, we have made with due care and diligence, and so we cross to the Britannic Islands. There are 2 Britannic islands, one called Albion, the other Hibernia. Albion is much the greater, and it is situated beyond the region of Celtogalatia, projecting from opposite Gallia Lugdunensis and Baetica toward Greater Germany. For it is not compact like other islands, but, as if disjointed and dispersed, it extends through a great part of the Northern Ocean, having 2 extremely long isthmuses like feet, of which the greater points toward the Cimbric Peninsula and the lesser toward Aquitania. The other island, Hibernia, lies near it, but more to the west and of less magnitude, and it has a situation as above described. We shall describe the sailing course around this latter first, and then pass to the greater. Sailing course around the Britannic island Hibernia. The Britannic island Hibernia is bounded on the north by so-called Hyperborean Ocean, on the east by the ocean which is called Hibernic, on the west by the Western Ocean, and on the south by the so-called Wergiwian Ocean. This is the general description of the island, and its local description comprises the Ibudai, 5 Britannic islands. The greatest length of the Britannic island Hibernia, taken from the beginning of its southern cape to the end of the Hrobogdian Cape, gives about 3,170 stadia as the length of the island. The width, beginning at the Sacred Cape and ending at the same Hrobogdian Cape, gives a width of the island of about 1,834 stadia. Its capes are distant from the horizons as follows. The northern cape is distant from the northern horizon 14,250 stadia. The southern cape from the equator 38,317 stadia. The eastern cape from the eastern horizon 40,317 stadia. It has 16 tribes, 11 notable cities, 15 notable rivers, 5 notable capes, 6 notable islands. The sailing course around the island of Hibernia is not more than 9,085 stadia, nor less than 6,845 stadia. Sailing course around the Britannic island Albion. Next, we set down the sailing course around the island of Albion. The Britannic island Albion is bounded on the north by that ocean which is called Deucaledonian, on the east by the Germanic Ocean, on the west by the Hibernic Ocean, beyond which lies the island of Hibernia, and by the Wergiwian Ocean, and on the south by the Britannic Ocean and the aforesaid regions and provinces of Gallia. This is the general description of the island, and the local description includes Lindonium, a city of Britain. The length of the Britannic island Albion begins on the western horizon at the Damnonian Cape, which is also called Ocrian. It ends at the Cape of Tarweduneum, which is also called Orcas, so that the greatest length is 5,225 stadia. And the width of it begins at the Damnonian Cape, which is also called Ocrian, and it proceeds to the peninsula of the Newanti, and the cape of the same name, so that the width of it by the longest line would be 3,083 stadia. It comprises 33 tribes, 59 notable cities, 40 notable rivers, 14 notable capes, 1 notable peninsula, 5 notable bays, 3 notable ports. The sailing course around the whole island of Albion is not more than 28,604 stadia, nor less than 20,526 stadia. The sailing course of the Western and Northern Ocean, in those parts which adjoin Europe, here has its end. Just as in the former book we set down by intervals the sailing courses along Libya on the right-hand side of the Arabian Gulf and the Erythraean Sea and the Indian Ocean southward, rarely giving the numbers of stadia, and followed an accurate sailing course along all the left-hand regions of Asia as far as the people and unknown land of the Sinae, indicating the stadia in the separate intervals, so now we have set down, according to our ability, the sailing course on the right-hand side of the ocean which adjoins Europe, from the columns of Hercules as far as the unknown land and the Sarmatic Ocean extending along it, and also of the Britannic Islands, setting down the numbers of stadia. And on the left-hand side of the Western and Southern Ocean we shall state the names of the cities and ports, and of the bays and capes and islands, and also, more rarely, we shall define the intervals by adding the numbers of stadia. There are 2 divisions of Mauritania, the one Tingitana, the other Caesariensis. Tingis, a city of Morusia. A citizen should be called Tingites, just as one says Memphites and Celites. The tribe name is Tingitanus, and in the feminine gender, Tingitana. Babai, a city of Libya. Amisa, a city of Germany.